Hi, this is Kim Watson. Welcome to a weekly outlook. And yes, GANFan, this is it is Monday afternoon by the time I recorded this, so not first thing in the morning. And hopefully it'll be with you at some point in your email this afternoon, evening. So should look at the sentiment. I shall be looking, not at all. I'll be looking at the fundamental data coming out this week. Yet to see Prime Minister May speak this afternoon. Maybe supposed to be speaking in Parliament, I understand. I'm not too sure the timing of that. But we've just had retail sales out. They came in below expectations there. In fact, I should just update this to show what they came in. There you go, minus 0.1 and just 0.1 on the overall big number there. So a little bit disappointing for sure on US retail sales. Not had a great effect on the market at the moment. As I said, this week then we got some inflation data coming out for the New Zealand dollar this evening at 10:45. Beyond that, Aussie policy minutes coming out at 1:30 Tuesday morning. Then the jobs numbers come out for the UK, bigger figure here. Generally get some volatility around this, although the expectations are pretty much in. I should imagine we're coming in line. They're pretty much in line with last month's by looks of things. Got some speakers in the afternoon. Just need to click on here. Due to testify parliamentary reappointment. Okay, so there's a couple of speakers there. Two due to speak about the economic outlook at the annual Goldman Lecture in Economics. There you go. So there's a FOMC speaker there. That's 9:15. It's quite late. So okay, not massive. The most important thing on Tuesday is the employment data. I almost said non-farms, but we don't call them that. Coming into Wednesday, inflation in the morning, CPI, very important figure, first thing there, Wednesday morning. FOMC speaker there in the afternoon, but outside our normal trading time. But important there at 7 o'clock is the FOMC minutes. So key data, key timing there at 7 o'clock. That will no doubt create some volatility in the markets on Wednesday evening. Moving into Thursday, and really important things here. UK retail sales. Sorry, sort of missing the Aussie data for you Australian dollar traders. 1:30 Thursday morning, and then we've got a Bank of Japan governor speaking there, tentative, so no idea what time that will be. Probably before 9:30, by the way it's set out on here. Then UK retail sales at 9:30. The European Economic Summit is due to start on Thursday. I'm sure if we will see comments coming about Brexit before then, but will certainly they'll certainly affect and be coming out on Thursday, no doubt. It's an all-day event. I'm not too sure what time it exactly starts, but as people get there for the meeting, they will no doubt be talking and be interviewed. So expect volatility around the pound, the euro for Thursday. Aside of that, FOMC member speaking late in the afternoon. They're due to speak about economic outlook. So there's a member speaking there at 4:30 on Thursday. So it could create some volatility. Side of that, then moving into Friday, public sector net borrowing. No, it's not a great mover in terms of worrying about that. Canadian data, retail sales, inflation, etc. may create some volatility for the Canadian dollar. And we got Bank of England Carney speaking there later on, due to speak at the Economic Club of New York luncheon, but that could create some volatility. I'm sure he'll be asked questions, so maybe late on Friday some questions, but not a great deal out this week to be watching there. Well, I say not a great deal to be watching, and it's the unknown about obviously the Brexit situation. So let's have a look at the currencies and look at them technically, and we'll have a look at the sentiment on them as well. Technically, the euro dollar here last week ended up with a bit of spinning top candle there, which could suggest further upside. I mean, it's seeing a bit of further upside at the moment. Where to? Well, weekly pivot, the weekly 21. So I'm going to talk about the weekly pivot in just a moment, because it's on the chart below price at the moment, and that is always something to be watching out for if it does start rolling through here. this morning it would suggest there was dollar weakness across most of these markets, and we've seen many of the markets pushing up here. The euro is no exception against the dollar at the moment. We'll see how things continue through into Thursday, when we see the EU Economic Summit, and whether they're all bullish and whether the euro will get a further kick up there. But for now, it's well, it is shoving back up there on the shorter time frames. And where to in these time frames? Well, there is the 34, the 100 sitting above us on the dailies, just above. Weekly pivot actually hasn't been monthly pivot, I beg your pardon, hasn't yet been hit, and that could in itself be a target to the upside. Then we start looking beyond that if it does get a wiggle on towards the 1750 area and into those bodies of the previous highs there, maybe into the monthly R1. So there certainly is some potential up to the upside there. Sentiment wise on the euro, if I can pick the right currency here, move that out of the way and get the euro here and look at the sentiment on the euro. How's it moved over the week? Short positions increased a little bit more, long positions not so much with the asset managers, but they're still well, close on 2 to 1, not quite 2 to 1 in terms of bullishness. So still bullishness there, and still bearishness, and a flattish sentiment change there from the hedge funds. So sentiment, let's say, slightly picking up on the shorts there, slightly pointing more shortish. Okay, so that's where we are there. Let's move on to cable. So cable can't really do too much wrong at the moment in a lot of ways. Weekly wise, where we ended up with that doji bar, which a bit of an indecisive bar there, but actually managed to close back higher than the previous weekly bar, which has put it in effectively a bullish pivot swing. Now where to with cable? Well, anything really good on Brexit could see it pushing up quite strongly into the 134.50 area, where that weekly 50 is, but it's a risky path. I keep on saying this on my weekly and daily outlooks rather. It's a risky old pairing to be trading. We saw the gap down over the weekend there. You can see what happens quite quickly with well, okay, there's no one to trade it, but all the same, it's pitched up well, closed the gap today, and well, does look like it's still in higher lows, not quite higher highs recently, but still could be pushing up and breaking towards that monthly R1 and prior highs if it carries on in this direction. So still bullish from that point of view. Sentiment wise, it's pretty flat in terms of the asset managers. It's still 2 to 1 bearish on it roughly, and well, leverage funds few increase in the short positions there, but nothing particularly significant either way. So the sentiment's neutralish, not changing. Okay, dollar yen. Well, dollar yen, it's put the weekly pivot swing in last week, and it looks like it could have some further downside here. It's quite solid looking on that weekly picture. Just found a bit of support maybe off the daily trend line that was pointed out to me earlier this afternoon. That may give it enough support to push up towards its weekly pivot, which is just above us there, and just about where the monthly pivot is, roundabouts. We'll see how it goes, but at the moment it's a pairing that's been a sign of the sentiment. When we saw the big sell-off last week, the yen moved down quite considerably, so it is still seen as a safety pairing. In terms of where's the money? Well, the money's going to the long side on the yen at the moment. It's switching across from these short positions, gradually moving to the longer positions at the moment. So a stronger yen it's expected from the asset manager's point of view. Hedge funds are still seeing the bearish side, but not so much. Well, I don't know. It's a lot of the long positions have been shut off there actually. So yeah, quite a big swing off the long side of things there. Maybe profit taking, but it's still nearly 3 to 1 bearish on the leveraged hedge funds. So sentiment, as I say, 2 to 1 2 to 1 on the short side, or nearly 2 to 1, not quite 2 to 1.5 to 1. Okay, on the hedge funds. Right, okay, Aussie dollar. Aussie dollar's seen a decent bounce here, but there was some weekly divergence there. It's closed up more positive here, pushing up a little bit more, and started moving up. It's a clean old movement most of today. It's been solid, looking like it could be pushing up towards the 34, maybe the 50. Obviously it's got to get past that 21, but it has been tested. It has the 34, so 50 moving average may be in scope along with that trend line. I would imagine we'd possibly get some selling coming in around that level if it gets there, on the basis of traders will be just looking at trading the trend, selling into the trend line. But I would point out it has been tested a number of times, so maybe it's got more in the tank. But a bit slow, but overall, but not massive price action, but it is moving positively. Sentiment. So the sentiment on the Australian dollar, just check in here. It's still relatively bearish and increasing to excuse me, towards the bearish side there from the asset managers, and likewise well, a bit more of a still more a 2 to 1 situation from the hedge funds there towards the bearish side, but technically, as I say, still getting the kicker there, so it doesn't all tie up. But what that possibly means that if we see something to generate some dollar strength, it could drop quite quickly. Okay, in other words, Canadian dollar. So technically Canadian dollar is softened actually since the good news a couple of weeks ago. It's been pushing up, although oil's been holding reasonably well. It's still in this bigger weekly picture. It's got lower highs, lower lows. It still looks like it could at some point, it's run up to its upper band here maybe, and reacted off that. Maybe it's got some further downside to be had. It's not an easy route at the moment. You can see on the daily was the lower highs there, lower lows still through there, but got potential. It's just pulled back to the weekly pivot today. It looks like any weakness seems to be punished quite quickly, as opposed to the downward price action seems a lot slower. But we'll see how it runs. At the moment, as I say, with that bigger term trend, it could continue in that route, and would suit any sort of upside with the euro and the pound, etc. Okay, looking at sentiment, short positions have softened off here, reduced, but well, 2 to 1 in terms of what's come off there, and it's still bullish from the asset manager's point of view, quite opposite towards the leverage funds there. So, but positions coming off both the long and short side there over the week. So sentiment not changing massively on a ratio, around about the same. So nothing signalling there. Okay, and finally I'll do the New Zealand dollar here. I don't do this all the time, but I've been talking about it for a long time because it was extreming on the sentiment. Again, good solid picture last week, pushing up there. Daily wise, it's still hoofing up, has got the weekly pivot below, so any retracement might just come back towards that in the meantime, but just pushing on through there. Target wise to the upside, well, there's 34.50 all spread out, all been hit before, and then of course the trend line that's sitting across the top there. Sentiment wise, I talked about this so much. He says, let's just make sure I'm on the right one. That's the minis. Have I got the? I have not put the Canadian. Let's just switch to the New Zealand dollar. Didn't prepare one earlier. That's certainly not a Blue Peter touch, is it? So looking at the sentiment here, if I can just scroll down, there we go. Looking overall, what's been going on, and as I mentioned, it is such an extreme position here that at some point it's likely to bounce. Well, maybe this is the bounce that we're seeing at this stage that will bring those numbers down, but at the moment it doesn't look like they're dropping too far. The short positions are just increasing on a 2 to 1 basis on the hedge funds, and pretty much the same on the asset managers there. Not massive positions, any of that on either on this pairing on this currency even, but all the same, getting a bit bearish again. Maybe buying at a discount as they perceive it. So as I say, tilt's technically strong. S&P's talked about this last week with its potential for rolling over. Let's have a look at what happened. Well, it showed its weakness, and it showed the weakness in the previous week there. When you look at it on the dailies, slightly lower high. Last week it really just eventually rolled over there. At the moment, finding support still off this weekly 50. It's got the potential still to roll. It's consolidating at this phase here. Be quite nice to see it run up to its weekly pivot, which is just above, and then maybe have a reaction. But as I say, consolidating momentum soundly down at the moment. But let's have a look at the positioning here and where money's been coming. You look at that big lump of options coming off of long positions, closing out by the asset manager. Second week on the row, I believe, that money's been coming off by asset managers. We'll have a look at the graph at the moment. Short positions increase slightly. Ironically, the short positions coming off, maybe some profit taking coming here in terms of the hedge funds there, and some long positions going back on there. So that's relatively flat, the sentiment across hedge funds, but certainly quite a chunk of money coming off there from the asset managers. And looking at overall then, asset managers, it's not really much of a trend down. It did pick down last, or maybe quite neutral last week then, but certainly the net position pulling down this week a little bit more. Right, so that's pretty much that. I'll quickly take a look at gold, because I get asked questions about this regularly, and it's had a bit of a pitch up, and you can see it's now into its weekly. We're around about maybe marginally short of the weekly 200 there, but has looked quite solid. Sentiment overall a bit soft on the S&Ps, and it's looking for other places to go. And when there's risk, the gold tends to catch it, and it certainly caught it last week there. How much further? Well, the sentiment's strong at the moment. There may be a bit of divergence going on. There's marginal divergence on that daily point of view on the RSI there, but it's got some potential. If you see the S&Ps continue to fall off, maybe we'll see gold continue to push up. It has broken out of that trend, or that range it had been sitting in all that time. It's probably got a bit more to go to cover that range in terms of one-to-one movement. And what I mean by that is between the highs and the lows there, the distance between the two may need to go up as high as R3 to work that off. But at the moment, as I say, erring more bullish. Right, that's it for me. Have a great week. Bye for now.